Hi there. So today I'm going to give you a little lesson on how to plant tomato plants. So tomato plants are a kind of warm, loving, long season crop. So especially up here in the northern regions, you can't really just put a seed into the ground. You need to either start them inside or in your greenhouse or buy a plant from your farmer's market or garden center. So today I've got some tomato transplants that we're going to plant. And they're a little different than planting your average transplants. The difference with planting tomato plants to other transplants is that you want to plant them a lot deeper. You're actually going to bury a bunch of the stem, maybe about up this far, underground. Because with tomato plants, they will actually send roots off their stem. And so you'll get a much better root system on your plant if you plant them a lot deeper. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig a hole. And I tend to plant tomato plants probably about 18 to 24 inches apart. And you'll notice we're using a big shovel instead of a little trowel because we want to put them fairly deep. And so once you get your hole dug, and the depth of your hole depends a bit on how big your tomato plant is. So like for this tomato plant here, I'm kind of aiming to have it covered about up to where my hands are with soil. And so I'm going to pinch off these leaves, these lower leaves that are going to get buried. Just set those aside. And then into the hole, I'm just going to put a little bit. This is like a mixture of like rock powders and some organic fertilizers. It's just going to give it a little bit of extra food because tomatoes are pretty heavy feeders. So you can use whatever you use for your kind of organic fertilizer. And then I'm going to take my tomato plant out of the pot. And this tomato plant's in a fairly good sized pot because I just potted it up a few weeks ago. And so you'll see, so this is where the soil came to in the pot. So with your other transplants, this would be as deep as you'd want to go. You wouldn't want to bury it any deeper, but because this is a tomato plant and you're going to get the roots coming out of the stem, we're going to bury it about up to here. So I just put that down into the hole. And we had a pretty good rain yesterday, so the soil's pretty moist. If it wasn't moist, I'd give it a bit of water. But like I said, it's pretty moist, so I'm not too worried about that. But I am going to give it, I've mixed up this batch of, it's like a fish and seaweed fertilizer. And so I'm going to pour some of that into the hole, kind of just onto the plant. And let that soak in. And that just gives it some extra nutrients and kind of helps it transition and kind of lessens the transplant shock from it going from its pot into the ground. And then I'm just going to fill this back in with some soil. And you can see that this is covering up quite a bit of the stem. And then that's all ready to go. And if the soil was pretty dry, I would water it again on top, but because we had so much rain yesterday, we don't really need to do that. So that's how you transplant a tomato plant.